On your corner, in your corner. This is WJZ News at 11.
You've got to stop the bleeding. You've got to re-implement Donald Trump's border policies, build the wall, re-implement deportations.
He had the fairest and the toughest bill on immigration that this nation's seen. Donald Trump said no, told them to vote against it because it gives him a campaign issue.
Moments ago, both vice presidential candidates left the stage after their first and only scheduled debate. We'll have a live report from CBS News Broadcast Center in New York coming up shortly.
No contract, no work. No contract, no work.
But we begin with the strike in Baltimore and at more than a dozen other ports from Boston to Houston as the International Longshoremen's Association says its members will not go back to work until they get better pay and better protection on the job. Welcome to the news at 11, everyone. I'm Rick Ritter. Tens of thousands of union dock workers remain on the picket line tonight after their contract expired. Those most recent negotiations made a bit of progress but failed, and the strike having a huge impact on business at the Port of Baltimore. And if a deal is not reached soon, rippling effects on the supply chain and our local economy will soon follow. WJZ's Kelsey Kushner has been following these negotiations since earlier this summer. Kelsey, you had a chance to speak with one business owner tonight about the impacts this strike is already having.
Rick, well, the immediate impacts we are going to feel from this strike are going to be on the economy and the supply chain. Now, one business owner that I spoke with today said it's still too early to tell just how much his business will be impacted by this strike, but he did say that if they don't find a resolution within at least 3 weeks, it will be devastating.
So this material over here that's paper wrapped, it's smaller strip sizes, ornamental kind of metal, that is only made overseas. This stuff comes in from Turkey, and that comes in on a container, so that will be affected immediately.
Vince Pappas, president of Stone Steel Corporation, is keeping a close eye on the dock workers' strike at the Port of Baltimore.
And then we're really not sure how it's going to affect everything else. The ships are going to get delayed coming in, so even the break bulk stuff might get delayed, and all of that could tighten up supply in a market where things are already a little sluggish.
Tuesday, nearly 25,000 longshoremen dock workers walked off the job at ports in the East and Gulf Coast, including here in Baltimore City, demanding better pay and protection from automation. It's the first dock worker strike in nearly 50 years.
And we're going to keep fighting, and we got a future ahead of us.
The U.S. Maritime Alliance, who represents the shippers and ports, countered the union's proposed $5 an hour increase with a 50% wage increase over 6 years. But the union says it's not enough.
No contract, no work.
The strike is bringing billions in trade to a screeching halt as ships with construction materials and consumer goods remain anchored in the Chesapeake Bay. Pappas says the strike comes at the worst possible time, with its impacts on supply chain congestion to intensify the devastation left behind by Hurricane Helene in the south.
Well, we found that the domestic suppliers will take advantage of shortage situations. Steel industry is heavily supply and demand oriented. And so what I'm going to be watching very closely is the price of everything we buy, because it could go up pretty quickly.
And experts say that for every day that the Port of Baltimore is closed down, it's about 6 days of backlog. Reporting live tonight, Kelsey Kushner for WJZ.
Yeah, the implications could be huge. Kelsey, thank you. Playoff baseball officially underway in Baltimore. The Orioles postseason, well, started with a pitcher's duel at Camden Yards. Unfortunately, they were on the short end of a 1-0 loss to the Royals. That means, yes, the Orioles need to win tomorrow to stay alive. Starter Corbin Burns, spectacular. But in the 6th inning, one man on second, Bobby Witt Jr. drives in the game's only run, a single to left. The O's could manage only 5 hits in this game. Game 2 tomorrow, 4:30 at Camden Yards. Sports director Alex Glaze will have a full recap and reaction later on in sports. And the rain held up at Camden Yards for the first game. As we turn to the weather now, another cool night in Charm City. Maybe a bit cloudy out there. At least the rain's out of the way, though. That's the good news. First Alert Weather Chief Meteorologist Derek Beasley joins us now with a look at your forecast and what we could expect weather-wise for Game 2 tomorrow, Derek.
Well, Rick, that's a really good question. It looks like as we go into tomorrow, less rain, still some clouds around the area, though. And that's kind of the thing that we're going to be plagued with for one more day, and then things are going to improve as we get towards the end of the week. Now, we still have a few showers out there now. Notice the radar. They're very small, very widely scattered in nature, and that's about what we're going to deal with here overnight tonight, maybe maybe some drizzle, but some light rain, nothing too heavy. Temperatures 60s across the state now. The warm spot, Ocean City at 70 degrees, 50s out towards the mountains in far western Maryland, at 62 here in Baltimore, as well as Bel Air. So tomorrow morning, right around 60, some spots in the upper 50s, mostly cloudy. Still can't rule out a stray shower, but overall it looks like a drier day with highs tomorrow only topping out into the upper 60s. But sun and warmer temperatures will make their return. We'll have the latest forecast into the upcoming weekend in just a few minutes. Rick, send it back over to you.
And hopefully they always get back on track tomorrow. Derek, thank you. Well, WJZ has learned the U.S. Marshals have joined the search for a teenager wanted in a deadly shooting at the Columbia Mall. This happened back in July. You might remember 17-year-old William Thomas Marshall III has been charged with first-degree murder now. Anyone with information on his whereabouts is asked to call police, and a reward for that information leading to his arrest is now $30,000. And the trend of crimes committed by children and state laws limiting how and suspects under the age of 17 can be handled has become a major issue in Maryland. And today, the State Department of Juvenile Service announced some new reforms now, saying that suspects accused of violent felonies will now be put on electronic monitoring if not detained. Those already on monitoring accused of a violent felony will be detained. DJS also launching new support programs for juvenile offenders now. And these new reforms from DJS come as a 15-year-old is being charged as an adult in this brutal attack on a 66-year-old man. This video, you've seen it. It happened in Butchers Hill last week. An 18-year-old also being charged and being held without bond. City police say Montez Valley was armed with a gun when he and the 15-year-old were arrested hours after that attack. Police also say both suspects were caught with the victim's property. A search still ongoing for 3 other suspects in the attack. And it's been a huge problem for years. There's now a new effort to tackle the long-standing issue of blight and vacant properties all across Baltimore City. Governor Wes Moore signed a new executive order today setting up the Baltimore's Vacants Reinvestment Council. Moore says that council will leverage investments to get homeowners into 5,000 currently empty homes in the city, and this over the next 5 years, offering up opportunities to all of Baltimore. Well, a federal judge rules a pro-Palestinian group can go ahead with plans to hold a vigil on UMD's College Park campus on October 7th, saying the school violated the First Amendment by revoking permission. The judge says that school's decision, quote, came about for reasons the Constitution simply does not countenance fear or disruption and anger of opponents. As we have reported, Students for Justice in Palestine wanted to hold that vigil to mark 1-year anniversary of the start of Israel's war with Hamas in Gaza. The school argued that vigil posed a security threat. And tonight, Governor Wes Moore said in a statement in part, quote, and I am quoting, I think October 7th is an inappropriate date for such an event. Terrorists target civilians, and that is what Hamas did a year ago. And tonight, Iran says its missile attacks on Israel in retaliation for Israeli strikes are over. But the country says there will be more and even worse launches if Israel retaliates. Israel promises those retaliations are going to happen. The Iran strikes came as Israel continues raids in Lebanon, with the military saying it is targeting Hezbollah militants. A larger Israeli invasion expected to follow from this. Lebanon's government says more than 1,000 people have been killed, many of them women and children. Natalie Brand reports for WJZ with the latest tonight.
President Biden and Vice President Harris monitored the attack and the response from the Situation Room, while the White House has warned of severe consequences for Iran. President Biden says what that will be remains to be seen.
Iran fired a barrage of nearly 200 ballistic missiles at Israel, Tehran's second attack on the Jewish state in close to 6 months. During a security cabinet meeting, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke about the escalating tension, saying Iran made a big mistake tonight and will pay for it. Israel's ambassador told the United Nations Israel will decide when and how it will respond.
It will be noticed. It will be painful.
An Israeli military spokesman said the country's air defenses intercepted many of the incoming missiles with help from the U.S. military and naval destroyers in the region.
President Biden reiterated the U.S. remains fully supportive of Israel, and he directed the U.S. military to help shoot down the Iranian missiles.
We're still assessing the impact, but based on what we know now, the attack appears to have been defeated and ineffective.
Iran says it launched the attack in retaliation for Israel's ground offensive in Lebanon and Israel's strikes on Hezbollah. And National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan called Iran's missile attack a significant escalation.
We are now going to look at what the appropriate next steps are to secure, first and foremost, American interests, and then to promote stability to the maximum extent possible as we go forward.
The Pentagon had moved additional military support to the Middle East ahead of Tuesday's attack.
Defense officials tell CBS News there are more U.S. military assets in the region now compared to when Iran attacked Israel back in April. The Pentagon on Monday said it would be sending an additional 2,000 to 3,000 more troops to the Middle East. That's on top of the 40,000 already in the region. Natalie Brandt, CBS News, the White House.
And new at 11 o'clock, there's a new potential roadblock in the way of a controversial train tunnel set to run through West Baltimore. Amtrak says an inspector general found a contractor Amtrak hired to manage and oversee that Frederick Douglass Tunnel project was not fully brought on board for more than a year. And because of that, an internal team has been overwhelmed with the complexity of the work. Amtrak says necessary planning is still not complete, even as major construction is set to begin soon. As we reported, neighbors have filed a civil rights complaint with the Department of Transportation over this project. They allege the tunnel will disproportionately impact black and low-income residents, potentially damaging or destroying their homes. Coming up after the break on WJZ News at 11, your #1 source for local late news. The vice president doesn't usually get a lot of time in the spotlight, and tonight, America got a close look at the two men competing to be next in line for the presidency. A live report from tonight's debate coming up after the break. And days after the rain stopped, the enormity of destruction is still coming into focus. The long road back for hundreds of thousands after Helene. But first, real fast, parents in Baltimore County, a quick look at what's on the menu for your child's lunch tomorrow. We'll be right back. Welcome back. With a little more than a month before Election Day, tonight American voters saw the two men who would be vice president face off in New York. The only scheduled debate between Ohio Republican Senator J.D. Vance and Minnesota Democrat Governor Tim Walz. The candidates spoke on a variety of topics from immigration to the economy, and they also discussed the 2020 election with different accounts of what happened at the U.S. Capitol during the insurrection.
I believe that we actually do have a threat to democracy in this country, but unfortunately, it's not the threat to democracy that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz want to talk about. It is the threat of censorship. It's Americans casting aside lifelong friendships because of disagreements over politics. It's big technology companies silencing their fellow citizens. And it's Kamala Harris saying that rather than debate and persuade her fellow Americans, she'd like to censor people who engage in misinformation.
I think we need to tell the story. Donald Trump refused to acknowledge this. And the fact is that I don't think we can be the frog in the pot and let the boiling water go up. He was very clear. I mean, he lost this election, and he said he did. 140 police officers were beaten at the Capitol that day, some with the American flag. Several later died.
Joining us live from the CBS News Broadcast Center in New York is correspondent Caroline Cummings. Caroline, thank you for joining us tonight. J.D. Vance, Tim Walz, not exactly household names, so I think the question a lot of people had, how did they really introduce themselves to the country tonight?
Well, good evening, Rick. So, interestingly, there was no opening statements in this debate. So there was not the initial from the jump chance for them to introduce themselves, their background, where they came from. Both of them, of course, have rural bona fides. That is a play to appeal to middle America with their backgrounds that are relatable to a lot of Americans who live in the Midwest. So they didn't get that chance right away, but they did throughout their answers to these questions try to draw on anecdotes from their background. Of course, Senator Vance grew up, talked about his mother battling an opioid addiction. He wrote a book, of course, about his life, his memoir, Hillbilly Elegy. So he touched a little bit on his background. And then Governor Walz, for his part, also talked about growing up in a town of 400 people in Nebraska. But again, this context for their backgrounds and their stories really came at other moments in the debate because they didn't get that chance to introduce themselves in a formal way with the opening statement, if you will. But a lot of this debate really was on policy, and they sparred on a lot of issues, from the economy to abortion rights to health care and the Affordable Care Act. So it was definitely a debate that was really steeped in policy, Rick.
You mentioned controversy, plenty of hot-button issues that are at the top of voters' minds, which were discussed. And at one point, both candidates' mics had to be muted here. Were Vance and Walz able to avoid making any missteps?
Well, I think both candidates had moments where they were shakier on answers than others. That's really to be expected with debate formats like this. But each candidate also had moments where they really shine. And so the best case scenario for a vice presidential nominee on stage is really to do no harm to the campaign. Don't make a colossal misstep that becomes kind of the headline for the next coming days. So we'll see how voters are feeling about how this debate played out in the coming days. And certainly the campaigns will respectively package clips and put them on social media at the moments where they feel their candidates shined the most. Rick.
I think the next 48 hours will say a lot. Caroline Cummings in New York City after tonight's vice presidential debate. Caroline, thank you for your time. Well, to a story now making headlines all across the country tonight. About 2 weeks after Sean Diddy Combs was arrested and charged with sex crimes, a Texas lawyer says he is preparing a lawsuit on behalf of another 120 alleged victims. Attorney Tony Boosby says that lawsuit is on behalf of 60 men and 60 women. 25 of those accusers under the age of 18 at the time of the alleged crimes. The youngest, just 9 years old. Busby says the alleged abuse happened as far back as 1991. An attorney for Combs categorically denied Busby's allegations as, quote, meritless. And earlier today, members of the American Postal Workers Union held a series of rallies coast to coast using the day of action to outline a series of demands. One of those rallies happening right here in Baltimore at the post office on East Fayette Street downtown. Workers calling on the agency to expand public comment so citizens like you can have a say in how the Postal Service is run. They also want USPS to increase staffing, saying that a quality mail service depends on a large workforce. WJZ in your corner with a commuter alert tonight. The MTA says all Metro subway stations will close this coming weekend as the agency begins testing a new system now. All of those stations will close Friday at 8 p.m. Take a look and reopen next Monday, October 7th at 4 a.m. And during this time, shuttle buses will transport riders between all stations every 30 minutes during service hours. The agency says this testing a critical piece of infrastructure that will support the new Metro subway rail cars set to begin in 2025. And from Florida to Georgia to the Carolinas and Tennessee, cleanup continues as communities face a long cleanup after Hurricane Helene. More than 150 victims now confirmed dead, hundreds still missing tonight. Nearly half of those fatalities were in North Carolina alone. FEMA has mobilized to provide assistance, and North Carolina's governor says that President Biden has approved mobilizing active duty military units as needed. Derek.
All right, thanks, Rick. Turned out to be another cloudy day across the area, but we do have brighter days ahead, more sunshines in the forecast. We may have to wait a few more days for that, though. Not to say it's going to be completely overcast, but there will be some breaks in the clouds later this week. It's really not until this weekend that we're going to actually see some full sunshine across the area. Most of the rain that we had earlier today has since fizzled out. We're still looking at some light showers out there, and it looks like anything that we do see tonight into tomorrow morning is going to be very spotty in nature. So most of us, though, are just going to be dealing with cloudy skies. Can't rule out, though, with some more upper-level energy making its way through the region, that we'll see a couple more light showers. Shouldn't be anything more significant than you having to turn the windshield wipers on from time to time, perhaps for your morning commute. But we're expecting more clouds here for your Wednesday. Sunshine is going to return here later this week and especially this weekend. And as a result, those temperatures are going to respond and be a lot warmer outside. Live look outside from our Maryland Science Center cam. It's a cloudy night here across the area. Temperatures at 62 out at BWI Thurgood Marshall with an east wind at 6. And temperatures across most of the state right now generally into the low to mid 60s with a few spots right around 70 in southern Maryland and the lower eastern shore. So again, tonight, temperature right around 60 degrees. Very slim chance for a shower here through late tonight and tomorrow morning, and perhaps lasting into early tomorrow afternoon, because what we're waiting for is this upper level energy that you see here causing these showers. This has yet to swing through the region, so we can't quite get rid of the rain chances and the cloud cover until this thing moves on out. I think we'll be able to get rid of the rain chances by tomorrow afternoon. The cloud cover, though, will likely stick around here for another couple of days. As again, your forecast for Game 2 of the Wild Card Series here for tomorrow at Camden Yards, 4:38 first pitch. Temps in the mid to upper 60s. A mostly cloudy sky. I do think we stay mainly rain-free. So again, Futurecast showing a few of those spotty showers in the morning. Mostly cloudy skies here throughout the afternoon. maybe a few more peaks of sunshine on Thursday, but I still think the clouds are going to be a little bit stubborn to get out of the area. But I do think we'll see a little bit more sunshine here later this week. Same thing coming up on Friday, partly to mostly cloudy skies. And then looks like this weekend, notice how the cloud cover drops down to about 20 to 10% coverage here for the weekend. We're expecting a cold front, though, on Monday, so the cloud cover will go back up just a little bit. And after that, look at this dip in temperatures we're going to get here early next week, highs in the 60s. And by next Tuesday and Wednesday morning, we're looking at low temperatures into the 40s. So again, here's what we're expecting for tomorrow across the state, primarily into the upper 60s to near 70 degrees. So another cloudy afternoon, but we do expect more sunshine later this week. We're expecting highs to respond into the mid to upper 70s. And then by this weekend, maybe near 80 coming up on Saturday.
Alex Glaze at Camden Yards as the Orioles lose Game 1 of their wild card series against the Royals and now face a must-win Game 2 to keep their season alive. I have highlights and reaction from the clubhouse coming up next in sports.
As we told you earlier, playoff baseball officially underway. The Orioles season, though, down to a must-win game tomorrow. The Royals took the first game of the wild card series in a game where the bats were a bit too quiet. Sports director Alex Glaze has highlights and reaction from Camden Yards.
October baseball in Baltimore. Game 1 of the O's wild card series against the Royals was a pitcher's duel. Orioles ace Corbin Burns and Royals ace Cole Reagans were absolutely fantastic in the series opener. Burns was pretty much everything the Orioles hoped for when they traded for him back in the offseason. He pitched 8 innings of one-run baseball and struck out 3. But that one run was the difference. In the 6th inning, Bobby Witt Jr. with 2 outs gets an RBI single to go through and put the Royals up on top 1-0. The Orioles had chances throughout the game but struggled to produce with runners in scoring position. 1 run was enough to decide this one. Cole Reagans and 3 Royals relief pitchers shut out the Orioles 1-0. And now the O's must win tomorrow to force a Game 3 or their season is over.
I think everybody understands the position we're in, and we need to win tomorrow. I don't think it's a team meeting rallying cry. I think everybody fully understands what the situation is.
You can't sit there and sulk on a loss today. I mean, it happens, but got to go out there and play your butt off. Just play as hard as you can, and I feel like that's what we're all going to do.
For me, there's no better group I'd rather be with, and I think that's how everyone feels in this locker room. Everyone's had each other's back all year, and nothing changes just because of one game. You guys are going to show up ready to go tomorrow.
You know, for us, it's going to be come out, play loose, win every pitch, win every inning, and let the results, fall as they may.
Game 2 starting pitchers, it'll be Zach Eflin for the O's going against Royals right-hander Seth Lugo. Eflin came to the Orioles at the trade deadline and quickly became their second-best starter behind Burns. After the game, Eflin was asked about the approach to a win-or-go-home game.
At the end of the day, you treat it like any other game, obviously knowing the circumstances behind the game, but you got to be free and easy and play this game like that. So, like I keep telling you guys, we're going to have some fun tomorrow and play some good baseball.
Let's go to the American League's other wild card series. The Detroit Tigers on the road at Houston, and the Tigers continued their hot streak. Detroit scored 3 runs in the first inning and hung on for a 3-1 win. They can now wrap up that series tomorrow afternoon in Houston. It was Detroit's first playoff win since 2013. And the Orioles are on a similar streak. They haven't won a playoff game since 2014. And they are hoping that streak ends tomorrow and they're able to force a Game 3. First pitch for tomorrow set for just after 4:30. I'll send it back to you.
Zach Eflin has plenty of postseason experience. Alex, thank you. News at 11 continues right after this. Former President Jimmy Carter turns 100 today, marking the first time a former president has reached that milestone. In his honor, Habitat for Humanity, an organization Carter was heavily involved in, says they are keeping him in their hearts through volunteer work currently being done in Minnesota. Thousands of volunteers will be building 30 homes in the St. Paul area.
President Carter's often told me that building with Habitat is the best way he knows to put his Christian faith into action in a very tangible way, and that he and Mrs. Carter always feel like they got more out of the building experience than anything they could put into it.
Carter's human rights and social welfare campaigns helped him earn the Nobel Peace Prize in 2002. We'll be right back. Coming up live on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, journalist Chris Hayes, and live music from Brittany Howard tonight. For all of us here at WJZ, I'm Rick Ritter. Thank you for watching tonight. We'll see you right back here tomorrow. Until then, stay safe and go O's.